Hello, friends. Tonight, as the world settles into slumber, I will whisper to you. I know sometimes in the quiet of the night, you hear forgotten voices, echoes from a time long past, lingering in the shadows. Tonight, that voice will be mine. My name is Thomas. I was a common longbowman. But that word, common, it hardly begins to describe the life I lived, the sights I witnessed, the very earth I stood upon. My story, you see, is etched into the very mud, blood, and heroism of Agincourt. Even after all these years, the scent of it, earthy and metallic, still pricks at my senses. That cold, that palpable tension, that profound exhaustion, it all feels as vivid as yesterday. The year was 1415. In England, life flowed much as it always had. We toiled in the rich, dark soil of our fields, our days marked by the steady rhythm of church bells. Yet, a new current stirred that year. Our king, Henry V, a young monarch who had only recently ascended to the throne, carried a vision that burned with an almost terrifying resolve in his eyes. He was determined to claim his rightful place on the throne of France, by force if necessary. It was a claim, a sacred legacy that had passed down through his grandfathers, Edward III and the legendary Black Prince. Now, that ancient claim to the crown had burst into flame once more. For ordinary folk like myself, this promise held the allure of new lands, valuable spoils, and perhaps, just perhaps, a taste of lasting glory. Our powerful lords and the assembled parliament, sensing the shifting winds of opportunity, embraced this ambition with fervent zeal. France, on the other hand, was a realm in disarray, plagued by a king whose mind had faltered, and rent by the bitter, internecine feuds of the Burgundians and Armagnacs. This deep-seated chaos, a gaping wound in the heart of France, was Henry's most potent advantage. In the middle of August, under skies that promised a campaign, we embarked upon our journey, sailing towards the sun-drenched Norman coast with an army numbering around 10,000 men. My closest companion, my brother-in-arms John, a fellow archer with a quick wit and an even quicker bow, marched by my side. As our boots first touched the green, alien soil of France, a complex blend of apprehension and an almost giddy excitement stirred within us. Our young king, accompanied by his two brothers, the Dukes of Clarence and Gloucester, rode at the very vanguard of our host. His unwavering resolve, clear in his every glance and gesture, was a steadying force that bolstered our spirits. Our initial objective, a strategically vital port, was Harfleur. Upon reaching Harfleur, the sheer scale and forbidding majesty of its walls struck a chord of unease within us. The siege that followed stretched for 5 grueling weeks, proving far more arduous and bloody than any of us had anticipated. The French defenders within the city were unyieldingly resilient. From behind every stone, every breach in the battlements, a relentless storm of arrows and stones rained down upon us. Yet it was not the determined French warriors who proved our most formidable foe. No, our true adversary was an unseen, insidious enemy that gnawed at us from within. Dysentery. This insidious plague swept through our camps with terrifying speed, each rising sun bearing witness to dozens of our comrades being quietly lowered into the cold earth. When the siege finally concluded, the city, though dearly bought, was ours. But at what a cost! Almost half of our mighty army had simply melted away. We were barely 6,000 to 7,000 strong now. Exhausted to the bone, weakened by the relentless flux, our bodies were frail, yet our spirits, fueled by honor, urged us forward. King Henry, observing the swift approach of winter and the dire, weakened state of his army, made the difficult but wise decision to withdraw to the relative safety of English-held Calais. There, we hoped to find rest to resupply our dwindling stores, and perhaps, with the return of spring, to renew our offensive. We left Harfleur on October 8, 1415, our steps heavy, our hearts burdened by the fallen. We marched along the coastal strip, but the French, in their cunning, had shattered bridges, blocked vital crossings, and scorched the very fields, leaving nothing but desolation behind for us. Food shortages became a constant, gnawing hunger. Our path demanded we cross the River Somme. The French held every crossing point, anticipating our move. For days we marched, driven by an urgent need for sustenance, utterly spent, our reserves of strength dwindling. Finally, on October 19th, near a small place called Voyens, we discovered a shallow crossing point, a sliver of hope, and managed to ford the river. It was on that final stretch, as we turned towards Calais, that they found us. The formidable French army. It was the auspicious day of Saint Crispin. The date, etched forever in my mind, was October 25th, 1415. The air hung cold and damp, the recent rain having finally subsided. The land, freshly plowed fields, had transformed into a treacherous, sucking sea of thick mud. This very mud, a silent, impartial force, would prove instrumental in shaping the destiny of both armies. The French, arrayed under the command of Constable Charles d'Albret, stretched out before us, an awe-inspiring spectacle. Their numbers were truly overwhelming. Some murmured of 20,000, others whispered of 36,000. We, by contrast, were perhaps 6,000 or 7,000 strong. We must have seemed a mere handful, a desperate last stand against their immense host. The French commanders, in their initial strategy, had planned to encircle us, to patiently starve us into submission. It was a shrewd and sensible plan, I must concede, for food was indeed our most pressing concern. But the impetuous, hot-blooded young French nobles, they yearned for a swift, glorious triumph, dreaming only of crushing us with their sheer numerical superiority. That grave miscalculation, that very arrogance, sealed their tragic fate. Our King Henry, with a strategic brilliance that belied his youth, once again demonstrated his mastery in selecting the battlefield. This uncanny ability to choose the ground to our advantage was a recurring theme. The French had, indeed, committed the same fatal error at both Crécy and Poitiers. He positioned us near the small village of Agincourt, within the confines of a narrow defile. Our flanks were securely guarded by dense ancient woodlands. It was as if nature itself had conspired to aid us. The French, with their vast, cumbersome army, were forced to squeeze into this constricted space. Our king's genius had effectively nullified their overwhelming numerical superiority. We, the longbowmen, took up our positions on the flanks and at the very front of our lines. Before us, we painstakingly hammered into the earth our 1.8-meter-long sharpened stakes. These crude but effective barriers, like a bristling forest of spikes, were designed to impede the thunderous charge of the French heavy cavalry, acting as a terrifying, impenetrable defense. Our bodies, already weakened by the lingering effects of dysentery and bone-deep fatigue, ached with every blow as we drove those stakes deep into the sodden ground. But we knew, with an unshakable conviction, that this crude construction was our only chance for survival. The French battle plan, a document later discovered, was, so we learned, to first soften us with volleys from their archers and crossbowmen, and then to utterly crush us beneath the hooves of their heavy cavalry. But every meticulously crafted battle plan, once unveiled on the chaotic stage of the battlefield, undergoes a brutal transformation, especially when that stage is a sucking, unforgiving sea of mud. The moments preceding the battle, that agonizing silence, it was a silence that screamed. Only the mournful howl of the wind and the thunderous beat of my own heart echoed in my ears. John, standing rigid beside me, drew in ragged, shallow breaths. Our eyes, like those of every man in our ranks, were fixed on our king, King Henry, astride his horse, his armor gleaming faintly in the dull light. But it was not merely his polished steel that shone. His eyes, too, burned with an inner fire. He turned to us, and in that charged atmosphere, he delivered those unforgettable words. A poet, centuries later, would immortalize them. Yet we, that day, felt their profound power deep within our souls. And Crispin Crispian shall ne'er go by, from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, but he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap while any speaks that fought with us upon Saint Crispin's day. That was the moment. That was the pivotal instant when fear, that cold, insidious dread, gave way to an unyielding resolve. With hands that still trembled, yet new-found strength, we drew our bows taut. The French at first hesitated. The thought of traversing that treacherous mud to close with us gave them pause. But our king, with a daring and audacious move, ordered us forward, a little further, into a slightly more exposed position. Our purpose was clear: to provoke them, to incite them. First, the French crossbowmen and archers unleashed a few volleys. Bolts and arrows hissed through the damp air, a dark cloud of death, like an angry swarm of hornets. Some of our men crumpled to the ground, but then their heavy cavalry thundered forward. Thousands of horses, their powerful legs churning through the clinging mud, surged towards us. I stood shoulder to shoulder with John. We drew our arrows, one after another, releasing them in rapid succession, a relentless, deadly rhythm. Our target was clear: the horses, especially their heads and chests, which were often unarmored. The thick, heavy arrows we launched with immense force from our mighty bows brought the chargers down, one by one, their momentum broken. The scene that unfolded before my eyes: French knights, encased in their cumbersome, shining armor, struggled to advance, sinking deeper into the mud with every laborious step, while we relentlessly poured our arrows upon them. Many fell from their steeds before even reaching our lines, their heavy armor making it almost impossible to rise amidst the churning chaos. Our powerful arrows, to our grim satisfaction, even pierced through some of their supposedly impenetrable armor. The initial French charge, broken and demoralized, was driven back onto their own advancing infantry lines. A second wave of cavalry arrived, but they too crashed into the confused mass of the first wave. The dense forests on our right and left effectively prevented the French cavalry from attempting to outflank us. It was here, in this meticulously chosen terrain, that our king's brilliant foresight truly shone. The battlefield itself transformed into an impassable bog. Horses, men. We sank into the thick, cloying mud with every desperate step. Corpses began to pile up, forming macabre barricades that blocked the very passages. If an armored knight fell, it was highly unlikely he could rise amidst that tangled mass of struggling, dying bodies. The ground became a horrific lake of churning mud, fresh blood, and fallen corpses. So many men were inextricably tangled together that for a moment I felt as if I had forgotten how to breathe. When our quivers emptied, we cast aside our bows, the instruments of our ranged death. Now it was the raw, brutal clang of swords, axes, and mallets that sang the song of war. As longbowmen, trained in close quarters as well, we too plunged into the furious melee. Our lighter armor, compared to the ponderous heavy plate of the French, proved an immense advantage in that clinging mud. We moved with greater swiftness, with more agility. The French nobility, trapped in their heavy steel cocoons, found themselves caught in a suffocating death trap. At least the rear Third French units, witnessing the unimaginable chaos and carnage, began to break and flee. Despite every daunting odd, Henry V had led us to a stunning victory. Yet victory, especially one so profound, always demanded a terrible price. The French losses were truly staggering. Around 7,000 men. Some whisper of as many as 13,000. Our own casualties, by stark contrast, numbered only around 500, perhaps not even reaching 1,000. It was, to us, nothing short of a miracle. But that miracle harbored a dark, chilling undertone. Towards the very end of the battle, our king issued a chilling command: execute the prisoners. John and I exchanged a silent, horrified glance. We had never been ordered to do such a thing before. But an order from the king, in the heat of battle, was absolute. News had arrived of an attack on our baggage train at the rear, and there were still French troops in the third rank who seemed unwilling to break. Our king, it seemed, did not want his army preoccupied with managing scores of prisoners. He feared they might arm themselves again, rejoining the fray, turning a hard-won victory into a new, deadly struggle. This act, undeniably, flew in the face of the rules of chivalry, those unwritten codes of knightly conduct. Perhaps that is why French historians, even centuries later, have never truly forgiven Henry for it. In that moment, we saw the coldest, most brutal face of war. Many noblemen, kneeling in that sticky, bloody mud, were cut down without mercy. My heart, even now, trembles when I recall that harrowing command. Among those who fell at Agincourt were most of the flower of French nobility: 3 dukes, 6 counts, 90 barons, the Constable of France, the Admiral of France. Nearly 2,000 knights. This terrible culling represented the very blood of the French aristocracy. Such a catastrophic loss severely crippled French resistance to Henry's subsequent campaigns. Our King Henry, his helmet shattered, his golden battle crown dented, still stood tall, unwavering. He had led us, fought with us on the very front lines. To us, he was undeniably a hero. The resounding victory at Agincourt, more than any other event, forged England into a nascent nation, a single, unified entity. When we returned to London in November 1415, the welcome we received, I can never, ever forget it. Our king was hailed as a triumphant hero. Choirs sang jubilantly. Maidens with tambourines danced in the streets, and banners, emblazoned with the proud declaration, King of France, waved triumphantly in the autumn air. Hundreds of French nobles, their faces grim with defeat, were forced to march behind us as prisoners. Charles, the Duke of Orleans, a man of noble birth, would endure a full 25 years of captivity in England. Their public humiliation served as a stark testament to the sheer magnitude of our victory. The French, from that day forward, would studiously avoid any explicit mention of Agincourt, referring to it only as the accursed day. We, however, spent the next 5 years relentlessly conquering Normandy through a series of relentless sieges, and then, with Paris now within our grasp, we marched upon the very heart of France. The English king was so remarkably successful that in May 1420, with the signing of the Treaty of Troyes, he was formally named Regent of France and the chosen heir to King Charles VI. To solidify this grand new alliance, Henry married Charles's daughter, the beautiful Catherine of Valois. It truly felt like a dream. The throne of France, after generations of bitter struggle, seemed finally, unequivocally, within our grasp. But the wheel of fortune, as it always does, inexorably turns. Just as the chill of winter yields to the promise of spring, and spring gives way to the warmth of summer, so too did our fortunes shift. Henry, unexpectedly, succumbed to dysentery once more. In 1422, all the glory and pomp brought by his incredible victories vanished in an instant, like smoke on the wind. In his place, a frail and very young king, Henry VI, ascended the throne. And then Joan of Arc arrived. This simple peasant girl, who emerged in 1429, ignited a new, fervent hope within the hearts of the French. Under the renewed leadership of King Charles VII, the French slowly but surely rallied. We, in turn, began to lose everything we had so painstakingly gained. By 1453, when the long and brutal 100 Years' War finally drew to its weary close, we held no territory left in France, save for the solitary outpost of Calais. Then, exhausted by foreign wars, England plunged into its own tumultuous internal conflicts, the bitter wars of the roses. Agincourt, for me, it was not merely a battle. It was a profound lesson, an indelible memory, a haunting whisper. The whisper of mud, blood, and honor. It is the enduring story of a king's unyielding ambition, a people's steadfast resolve, and an army's ultimate destiny. And I know, with every fiber of my being, that day, Saint Crispin's Day, will never be forgotten, not in the dusty pages of history, and certainly not in the haunted memories of those of us who lived through its terrible, glorious dawn.